So this is where people need to respect that, yes, some other companions did not agree with Umar's style, but he's Umar and he was setting a precedent which was prophesied by the Prophet ﷺ, which was intended to be an application going back to Bani Qurayza in the beginning in the first place. Right? So this is very important to understand. So then you have the issue of hadith. The hadith sciences and its development. That's a whole other talk, we'll have it some other time. But in a nutshell, in Mecca and Medina and Yemen, there's hundreds of thousands of hadith. Statements that so-and-so heard the Prophet ﷺ said or did or approved of and so forth. People knew these companions, they knew the one they heard it from personally. They knew these people's lifestyles. They confirmed that this is acceptable. If there was a doubtful person that they heard it from, then they would not accept it. That was the beginning way of looking at it. This person said so-and-so, said the Prophet said, but that guy who he said he heard it, we know that guy is heretical. He's doing all kind of problems and this and that and the other. Didn't go to the mosque or whatever. You know, this person was caught drinking alcohol. Why would we accept from him a statement, right? So they had a very easy and they had a deep, thick reservoir in Mecca and Medina and this area of hadith. So that madrasat al-hadith will thrive there. We have lots of evidences to use literally, right? Now in Kufa, guess what political reality is going on in the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu and thereafter? There are three political groups that later became religious groups. Come on, you guys know this stuff. You have the Shia and the Khawarij that came out. The Shia are a group that originally were just a group said, we love Ali ibn Abi Talib. He is such a great, pious leader and courageous, wise man that we love. And he's the son-in-law and cousin of the Prophet. And the Prophet's only grandkids that we all love and adore are coming through him. And so we just see him as a very special person. Okay? But it became a problem when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu and Ali differed. And Aisha was on the side of Muawiyah at that time. Okay? So there was a difference. So then Shi'at Ali became a campaign that said, Ali is the rightful leader and the family of the Prophet is more rightful than anybody else to be a leader. So that was a political angle. Shia means a faction. So the Shia were the faction of the Muslims who preferred Ali as the leader of the Muslims, right? And thought that Muawiyah did not have a right to be a leader over him. You see? So just like we just had Obama and Romney, so there was Muawiyah and Ali. So the Shia were the ones who wanted to vote for Ali, right? Here's the interesting point. People would label me Sunni. I'm just a Muslim. I believe in Ahl Sunnah, but I also love the family of the Prophet and believe they hold great precedence too. But Ali was right in that debate and he was the rightful leader. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that, if you really think about that? We all believe that. Everyone they would call a Sunni thinks that. Isn't that interesting? So here's where religion overcame politics in our group. Right? Unfortunately, that's not the same with all people throughout history. So then the Khawarij, this is where it gets even more crazy. The Khawarij were Shia. But then when Ali, using wisdom and the consultation of some of the scholars, he said, okay, Muawiyah can be like the Khalifa of Sham in this area, and I will be over this area, and we'll agree to disagree, and there will be two leaders. Khawarij said, you're a kafir. They told Ali that. You're a disbeliever. How dare you take the rightful rule that is yours, because you're the holy family of the Prophet and all of this, and you allow Muawiyah and these other people to make a decision when you know you were the one that was rightly given this, because they have this claim that the Prophet made Ali as the leader a long time ago, which that claim is baseless, except for that's what they need to say to authenticate their claim. Okay? So now you have the Khawarij said, no, Ali, now you're a disbeliever. So they started to go against Ali. So now you have the Muawiyah's people against Ali and now some of his old followers. And now he's hearing stories amongst his group that he was the rightful leader from point one and that Abu Bakr and Umar, and he's telling them you're wrong. And they're saying, no, but we know what you're doing. It's taqiyya. You're hiding. You're very skilled at hiding your real opinion, right? So because of this, guess what? When you have a bunch of political factions, You saw the campaign last time when it was Obama and Romney, right? Guess what happened? A lot of lies were being put on national television about each other. Both sides. We have to be completely honest, right? A lot of lies in politics. So-and-so said, so-and-so means they were making Jeeps in China or whatever it was. Right? You heard it. And vice versa. So that started to happen. So people started to make up hadiths left and right all over Iraq. So the people of Kufa and Basra in this area in Iraq, they were very strict about accepting a hadith. And they have less hadith because the companions were more centrally located where their family and their lineage was. They didn't want to leave, right? So that's an issue that had to do with why the two different schools developed the way they did. So now we have the next generation, the tabi'een, the followers and the students and the children of the companions. So these people were followers of their parents and their teachers. Once again, back to a point you have to remember. The idea that my teacher, my sheikh, the great scholar, holding that person on a pedestal and assuming that they're above reproach. That's an Eastern mentality, right? And it was definitely prevalent. So they will just follow whatever whichever angle their teacher was, Abdullah bin Mas'ud, and then they learn from him as Alqama and Masruq, and these people. So these people, the Nakha'i and these Iraqis, they're taken from Abdullah bin Mas'ud, taken from Omar. That we need to be figurative. We need to understand the principles and this is our methodology, right? Because that's the Sheikh's way of thinking, right? You go into Mecca and Medina, it's like, we don't think about the scripture as an analytical principle. That's just whatever it says is what it says. That's what we do without question, right? So they're following their teachers. So the Madrasat al-Hadith, now you have the Tabi'in. These groups are here. So these are the teachers of the founders of the madhabs. So you have in Iraq, you have Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, you have Alqama, you have Hassan al-Basri. I'm sure you've heard some of these. You have Masruq. And they, Ata ibn Abi Rabah, great scholar and spiritual leader. These are there and they are founding the depth of discipline and they're kind of codifying the law. Then you have in Medina, you have Sa'id al-Musayyib, the great scholar of Allah. You have Imam al-Zuhri. So you have the grandchildren of Abdullah bin Umar and others. They're there and they're developed. You have the grandchildren of Abdullah bin Mas'ud are over there. Here's an interesting point. There's a scholar named Ash-Sha'bi who's in Iraq. He's following the literalist Madrasat al-Hadith. So Ash-Sha'bi is telling these people, you guys are thinking too much. He's in Iraq. He's a great scholar, high quality scholar. And he's saying, I've traveled around and I think we need to just amass hadith. We need to get a bunch of hadith and learn what was the exact ruling of the Prophet. Maybe what you're saying is an analysis, but maybe it's not right. This was Sha'bi. So the people of Iraq said, that guy is a simpleton. Right? That was their angle. He's simple in his approach. We're deep. We have the depth. We're following Umar, radiallahu anhu. Right? Then you have Rabi'atul Ra'i in Medina. It's a great scholar named Rabi'ah. And he's saying, you guys are not using the biggest gift, Allamahul Bayan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you an intellect, an ability to understand and contemplate things. The Quran keeps telling us to think and ponder and contemplate. Why aren't we taking that as our way? So they said, this guy, he's too much into opinions. He thinks he's able to understand scripture when the Prophet ﷺ gave all we need to know about it. So there was some, we'll say bad blood, but it was not bad blood. It wasn't division. It was just your methodology. I'm not comfortable with it, and so I'm not going to follow you, and I'm going to tell other people my methodology is better. So they had that. That was there back then. Till this day, it's there. But it was not division. It wasn't like he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like his angle is, we don't like it. We prefer the different angle, right? So this is something that they had. So now, how were these schools of thought developed? The unintentional, most important thing, the unintentional development of the schools of thought. Believe it or not, Amongst the tabi'een, in the time of Abu Hanifa, in the time of Imam Malik, there were dozens of scholars of their caliber. And even better, maybe. But not as popular. Not in an area or in a centralized city like Medina or Basra, where everybody's coming to their lecture in this giant city. They might be in a village over here, and they have very deep analysis and very Imam al-Awza'i, Imam al-Thawri, Abu Sufyan. You have all these great scholars all over the Muslim world. Tawus, Makhul, you have these scholars. And they have a depth, right? But what's happening is people are being attached to the popular sheikh that's in the grand mosque. You can't have two sheikhs in one grand mosque. It's my turf, man. Yeah. So what basically happened was the deep codified law from Abu Hanifa, which has a large percentage of principle-based juristic reasoning. He's making many rules that aren't having a literal Quran or Hadith in it. It's juristic, it's analysis, it's scholarly. Imam Malik formed his book called Muwatta, which was the first book ever written which has a codified law system in it. So Imam Malik did that in Medina. And to show you about the unintentional emphasis I'm giving about making these madhabs, the Khalifa at the time, I forget exactly which one because they all sound similar and you get confused with the Umayyads. But the Khalifa came to Imam Malik and said, look, you are the grand scholar of Medina and this is where the Prophet ﷺ is. This is the bedrock of Islam. The Muwatta, we're going to make that the official sunnah. He said, what do you mean? He's like, we're going to make that everybody must follow the Muwatta teachings across the Muslim world. Imam Malik said, no way. I will never do that. He said, why? He said, maybe I didn't cover everything. Maybe I made a mistake in transmitting it. He himself was showing that I am capable of mistake. Do not put me on a pedestal like I'm incapable of error. Abu Hanifa did the same. He had 3 students, Abu Yusuf, Zufar, and Muhammad Shaybani. These 3 students, if you look at their own codified law, they call themselves Hanafi because they got their principles by which they make their decisions from him. But they differed with him, I would say at least 30% of the time, all of them. He was setting a standard. He would tell them. He would say a ruling and they would say, okay, and then he would say, why? And they would explain, then they would question and say, so you think it's different? And they would say, yeah. He would say, convince me. These are narrated reports about Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu's style. Unfortunately, people are Hanafi nowadays, scholars. They're not reflecting that depth. They're very strict. Whatever is in the book, whatever we have said, it has to be, you'll find that with Malikis, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis as well. Not Hanbalis because of, we'll talk about what happened with the Hanbali method. I'm the oppressed guy. I'm Hanbali in basis. But people try to take over my madhab. They made a new one, thinking that they were fixing it. Yeah. So those scholars were not saying, whatever I say is authoritative, absolute truth that nobody should differ with. They just happen to be intellectual giants, every single one of them, with different angles of intellectual depth. And their followers were so amazed in, that point? We have to remember it, that aggrandization. Oh, he's our scholar. He learned from the children of the companions. He knows better than us. How could we doubt him? Right? So they're following him, circling around him in Medina. So you have, first was Nu'man Abu Hanifa in Kufa. And he learned from Hamad ibn Sulaiman, who learned from Ibrahim al-Nakhai, who learned from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and others, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud learned from the Prophet and Umar and others. So you see, there is a chain of transmission. Nobody's just making up their own thing. It all is based on the Quran and the Sunnah one way or another. So nobody can say, oh, madhabs are no good because this is just some guy's opinion. Well, his opinion comes from some sort of angle of scholarly, juristic, evidence-based, textual, scriptural analysis, right? So it's okay to follow any madhab, right? But to make it that these are the only ones that can be followed and no other opinion is right and whatever they said is right and if any other person different with them any other time is wrong, that is not according to the guys who they're calling them the Hanafi. So Abu Hanifa would not agree with that. If he was alive, I am putting my 100% belief. And if somebody said you have to follow Abu Hanifa and you cannot follow anyone else, he would say no way. I am not a prophet. I did not receive any revelation. I'm doing my best. I've been blessed with whatever God's allowed me to know this knowledge and these sciences, and I'm giving you the best I got. Could be some other guy. And Imam Shafi'i reflected that in his own statement. He said, after studying for many, many years and studying with many great scholars, he said, I came to the conclusion that I'm generally right, but I know I could make a mistake. And I assume that my opponent in the debate is generally wrong, but at some point he might be right and I might be wrong. That's Imam Shafi'i. This is well known, right? And I've met people who are devout Shafi'i followers that would never dare to disbelieve or not follow whatever he taught. But then they'll admit that he said that. And I say, but hold on, why are you acting like that and you're saying that he said this? There's a disconnect. Well, I don't know. I don't understand. I'm just a simple guy. He's the scholar. That mentality was never intended. So you have this development. Now, with these four schools, there's a basic spirit to each one of them. Imam Abu Hanifa, being this deep analytical and being the first major scholar of the Muslim world in Islamic jurisprudence, his students, they loved his methodology and his style, and many of them would hold to something that he said or what his three students said, and they wouldn't question it. So what happened is, the Hanafi school became, amongst the four, known as the school of opinion. Why? Because authentic texts would come to them afterwards, and then they would either disagree with that text, even though it's in Bukhari or Muslim or something else, and then they would say, we accept the text, but here's what it really means, and they will twist it to a very strange way to try to support what they're saying. Like, I'll give you one big giant example. The Hanafi madhab is the only madhab said a woman does not need a guardian to marry her. It's the official opinion of the school. That she doesn't need a man to marry her off. Right? And the problem is we have various chains of narration, all of the most impeccable, authentic status that said, the Prophet said, La nikah, la nikah, la nikah, duna wali. There will be no marriage. No marriage contract except for with a guardian. So then Shafi'is and Hanbalis and Awza'is and everybody else is coming to him, oh, student of the Hanafi madhab, this is the hadith. So they would say, but you don't understand that hadith. I think it's pretty clear. It seems pretty obvious to me. Well, it could mean that only a non-married woman. Or it could mean, and so they're using his angle against the grain of a very seemingly clear text, because that was always the practice. So you have that. So the Malikis are going to say, we have the text, and then we have everybody in Medina understanding what that means is, the only way we can marry any woman to any man is that her male guardian, father, uncle, brother, grandfather, is saying, I agree with that young man that he's a decent person that would be that I'm accepting to hand my female relative over to in living together and under his authority, right? So that was the angle. So the Hanafis, they made all kinds. So in the Hanafi madhab, there's different angles, but each one of them is going to defend that the seemingly obviously clear meaning and application of that hadith is not because Abu Hanifa said. Same thing. I'm sure you know about Asr prayer, right? Somebody's going to say, he's bashing the Hanafi madhab. I'm telling you exactly what the Hanafi madhab is and why. According to them, right? This is their reason why, right? It's called usul. It's the way they make their decisions. It's a very deep analytical approach, and it's opening the doors to that every time there's something that comes disagreeing with what he said, assuming Abu Hanifa knows more than anybody else. That's the basic problem. That's the basic issue here, is to assume that whatever opinion he arrived at is because he knows more than you in your hadith. This is the basic foundation of that. Another one is Asr time. If you go to a mosque where the Hanafi madhab is established, Asr time is when? Very late, right? Closer to Maghrib, right? Why? Well, because Abu Hanifa did not have any clear text, and so he did a deep analogy on a text that wasn't even related to defining the times of prayer. Had to do with the Torah and the Jews and some old, it's a long story. You have a hard time understanding his deduction. It is huge and deep. It's amazing that if that's all that we had, what he was able to do with it to define something for us that would not have been defined if there wasn't. But then the problem is you have Sahih Muslim, Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi, a very well-known authentic hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, whenever you have one spear's worth between the sun and the ground, then that's good, or two, or however it was. And so that's why it was very clearly defined. Fajr, each one. The hadith says Gabriel came down, he said Fajr is this much, Dhuhr is this much, Asr is this much, Maghrib this much, and Isha is that much. This is authentic hadith. That hadith was not available to Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu. So he did what he could with what he had, because he's the earliest. Remember, Abu Hanifa, there's no such person living yet named Bukhari. There is no Muslim, no Tirmidhi, no Abu Dawud. These people didn't exist yet. Those were all students of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Got to throw a little shout out. That's why the thing is the way it is, right? Okay? So the Malikis have a similar issue, right? It's following the way of the people of Medina, even though we have a hadith that goes against it. Right? Have you all ever seen how a Maliki prays? A real Maliki. Like this. Why are those people praying with their hands? Are they Shia? Well, no, they're probably Maliki if they were in the mosque here. That's how they pray, right? So where did we get that from? Well, originally that's what we saw people in Medina doing, right? Or we saw Imam Malik doing. And you have different angles as to why was Imam Malik doing that or whatever, but that's what they said. So then they said, but here we have many authentic hadith in which it said that the Prophet would grab his left with his right hand. We have many authentic hadith that said like that. So okay, those are authentic hadith, you can follow those if you like. But we have another authentic hadith in which Wa'il ibn Hajr described his whole entire prayer, and at no point does he say that he was holding his hand on his right over his left. So that's a hadith in which we were being told the detail of how prayer is done, and that wasn't mentioned. So they're trying to twist it around, even though you have other very many authentic hadith that said he held right over left. And you have hadiths that mention that he was holding it down here and up here, and the most authentic hadith doesn't say where he was holding it. Right? So this one and this one is perfectly okay. Those are all very clear based methodologies. Imam Malik also held a position different than everybody else about dogs. The dogs are not najis. The dogs are not filthy, and their saliva is not impure. This is Imam Malik. But why is that? Here's a hadith that said if the dog licks in your bowl, then it makes it this, so you got to wash it out and 7 times with some soap, some dirt. So, but he said, no, but in the people of Medina, these are all the grandchildren of the companions. They got thousands of hadiths. They live with the Prophet. They live with the grandchildren of the Prophet. Nobody understood what you're talking about in that hadith. So you got a hadith. I got a whole bunch of people that are born into revelation. And you're telling me they don't know? Right? So then they said, yeah, but Imam Malik, this is a hadith. You're from Madrasat al-Hadith. So he said, yeah, but I'm also a scholar. Look at the ayah in the Quran. It said that you can own a dog to hunt. And it says that dog can go and do what? When it brings back your meat. Can bite into it and bring it back. So he said, there's saliva that's going to get in that meat. Right? So now isn't that meat impure? And he said, nobody understood that in the history of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So your opinion is shaky because of Ahl al-Medina, what they said. So this is an angle. They're all going to say, they're going to accuse Imam Malik. You're going against a clear text, man. This is not right. You're following these people and they're humans. They don't have revelation. Maybe they're grandchildren of revelation. But they don't know. Right? So this is another example of why a principle within a school of thought will, and some just have interpretation. Imam Shafi'i has an opinion that but most Shafi'is won't follow it. But it's his official opinion. And the Quran said you have to make wudu if you touch a woman. So he said, if you touch your wife, your daughter, anything, just like this. Assalamu alaikum, how you doing? So now you lost your wudu. Everybody said, what are you talking about, Imam Shafi'i? He's like, that's what the literal meaning of the thing is. And they said, no, but hold on. We know the word touch is, the Quran has a nice way of saying things without seemingly graphic. So it's talking about a romantic touch. A very romantic touch. That's what it's talking about. So all the madhabs agreed. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he went in the middle. He said, well, if it was some sort of a passionate touch, even though it wasn't actually in the act, being safe, we should make wudu. But any general touch, I disagree with my teacher, Imam Shafi'i. Which is another point. Students of knowledge are disagreeing with their great teachers. And there's no problem with that. That was historically a precedent. This mentality that, okay, you only studied for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and so how can you dare disagree with your sheikh who studied 30 years? Well, Ahmad bin Hanbal was doing it. Imam Shafi'i was doing it. Imam Shafi'i was disagreeing with Imam Malik when he was 20 years old and Imam was 60. This is authentic history in Medina. If that was wrong, well, you're not Imam Shafi'i. Well, what if somebody told him that? We probably wouldn't have the Shafi'i madhab. You're not allowed to do that. Stop this, young man. Stop this seeking knowledge and thinking about what you learn and analyzing it yourself. Yeah, this attitude is not from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's this control factor. We control the truth. You young people don't know nothing. Right? It's an attitude. This is not the way of the original founders of this tradition. So, what is the most dominant madhab today? That's Hanafi. You have to know that. Come on now. Hanafi is found, I would say, maybe 2/3 of the Muslims are Hanafi. MashaAllah, represent. But why? That's the question. Well, because the last Islamic empire was the Ottomans, and the Turks were Hanafi. So they used their military might to officially instill the Hanafi madhab in all courts and all, even till this day, in Egypt, which is well-known Shafi'i stomping grounds, the courts are all Hanafi, right? Because of the Ottoman Empire. The kings allowed them to do that. So that's why that's there. So one sister came up to me and she says, my daughters are asking me, why do we follow this? Why do we follow that? I said, well, that's just because that's our maslak, or our method. And they said, but is that, did the Prophet tell us to follow that? Well, it's there's a scholar, his name's Abu Hanifa, and so but is he a prophet? No. Well, why do we have to follow him? This is an American kid disorder. So she came to me, she said, brother, how do I convince them to follow the Hanafi method? I said, you probably won't be able to do that. What you can say is, that's what I follow, and in our house, this is what we're going to do because I'm in charge of this house. But there's many other opinions, and you should seek knowledge and grow and learn and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your growth as a Muslim, and try to take opinion that you're sure you're willing to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this is what you feel is the right thing. So, where did Imam Shafi'i come from? He was a brilliant kid in Gaza, born in Gaza. Then he moved to Mecca. His mom took him there. And in Mecca, it was known very quickly that he is a prodigy? The prodigy. He was very, very quick to learn, master, memorize, understand, interpret, and so forth. So by the time he was 15, all the local scholars did not have anything new to teach Imam Shafi'i. And so they said, we're going to have to give him ijazah. He's arguing with us about stuff we already taught him, and we're trying to think about what he said, and we're like, wow, we never looked at it like that, right? So Imam Shafi'i went to Medina. And so in Medina, he became a student of Imam Malik. And so he's sitting in the lecture. Imam Malik is like 30, 40 years older than him. So he's sitting in his lectures. Very quickly, he found himself not agreeing with Imam Malik. So he sat with him for many years, took what he had to offer, learned the whole Muwatta and everything else. And then he went out seeking hadith and others. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal was born in Baghdad. And he was in Baghdad. He was the student of Abu Yusuf, who was the student of Abu Hanifa. So he learned fiqh, Hanafi fiqh, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, for the first 6 years of his training as a student of knowledge. He had, I think they said he had 9 crates filled with all of his notes that he had written over that time. And so he was a master of that. But he had a problem. He liked the principled angled. He liked it, and it's embedded in his madhab. But he didn't like that there was a lack of hadith, and there was all these accusations that they're following opinions over hadith. So he decided to become focused on gathering hadith after that. So he started traveling around the Muslim world, and he gathered hundreds of thousands of hadith. The Musnad of Imam Ahmad originally was 30 volumes long, like 10 Bukharis. And so these other Imams, Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi, they all learned from him, took his hadith, learned hadith from others, took his methodology and his sciences and expounded upon it themselves. And the hadith, it's interesting, the development of hadith sciences was through Ahmad bin Hanbal, but Ahmad bin Hanbal himself was very much grounded in the figurative style of Abu Hanifa. So you have the best of both worlds. And really in the end, if you look at any madhab of the 4, they have interpretive, principled, following the text. All of them have, it's now a mix, right? Some with more of an emphasis than the other, right? So in the end, the question is, what do I follow? You follow what you feel is the right opinion according to a sound scholar. Whether it's from the 4 Imams or from Ibn Hazm or from elsewhere, you listen to the analysis. You listen to the evidences, you look at its basis, you look at the quality of scholarship, and you decide what you think is best for you. Now, we need to, inshallah, we'll have a whole nother session. There's this whole argument and debate and accusation about, well, if you do that, then you become a fatwa shopper. And so now you just follow opinions that suit your desires, and now you make up your own madhab, which is basically the I follow whatever I like, a madhab that is this. And so is that wrong? Or do you have to follow one and this and that? It's a whole other discussion that we can get into at another time. Inshallah, if we have any questions, we'll take those. Any questions on the madhabs, their development?
I have a question to that, because at our Usra class, you told us we had to follow one madhab.
At what class?
The Usra class.
I said you have to?
I thought you said we had to follow one.
It was mentioned that one of our sheikhs who came and did a Maghrib Institute said that. I feel if you know of a madhab and you like it, you can, and you will be following something that is based on Quran and Sunnah if you do.
You can't shop around to like just fit your desires or needs.
I just said it will take another whole hour to discuss that, right? You should not. It's a whole new discussion, but the scholars said, if you don't have a madhab or you're not influenced by a madhab, if you have a scholar, if you have a local scholar, this is a scholar, this person trained, you go to that person. You don't want to get confused. Or if you know online a website of fatwa that's from a scholar that understands the American reality, which are few. This is a problem. People importing fatwas from a scholar who was talking about a circumstance and reality, making rulings that are not applicable to us here. So it's best to find a scholar that was native to here, because Imam Shafi'i, he actually did that himself. His students were confused. He went from Iraq, because he had been sitting with Muhammad Shaybani, the other student of Imam Abu Hanifa. He learned from him, and he had opinions, and he had rules and fatwas that he made. He went to Egypt, and then his students said, why are you changing some of your opinions? He was like, because this is different people in a different place. They have a different situation about how the law is going to apply to them. Right? So it's okay, it's perfectly good, it's better, it's going to be simpler for you as a believer to just take one madhab or to take one scholar and follow that route. Because to always, over every little thing, if you want to, how am I supposed to pray? I'm telling you, just to look up the differences of opinion amongst how should we pray, you spend hours researching that. If you just stick with one simplified book, then, it's interesting because the Salafi movement in Saudi, they think they're breaking it down to just Quran and Sunnah, as though that wasn't there before, as though all these other founders of the madhab didn't know the Quran and the Sunnah. And so they're like, we're just going to make it real easy for you and make prayer according to the Quran and the Sunnah. Well, in the end, they're using the same proofs that the madhabs use, but they're using their own interpretation. So they're forming a new what? A new madhab. And many times they came to one of the conclusions of the previous madhab. Yeah.
How many years after Abu Hanifa did Imam Hanbal come?
It's like 60, something like this. 60 years.
You said he originally started to study under the Hanafi.
Abu Yusuf, yeah, his student. So Abu Yusuf was the main student of Abu Hanifa, and he became elected by the Khilafah as Qadi al-Qudaa. The only one that was actually ever elected as that was Abu Yusuf. So Imam Ahmad, that was in Baghdad. So Imam Ahmad would sit in his lectures all the time and study with him. But he became frustrated that it's too figurative and I need to go learn more texts. So he went and traveled all over many places to gather hadith. So-and-so said, then traveled to a new place, For that reason, after he left, many people didn't know who was Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, but they heard about him. So they would be sitting there talking to Imam Ahmad, and be like, yeah, there's this sheikh named Imam Ahmad, he went all over, he's got 1 million hadith. He's like, oh, mashallah, yeah, hopefully one day we'll benefit from whatever that guy has to offer, He doesn't want to, he's humbling himself, right?
So how many hadiths did Abu Hanifa have?
Much less than all the other
But that
ones.
was because he came earlier.
That's it. That's the reason.
So would you say that Imam Hanbal is like version 2.4 compared to Imam Hanbal?
No, because I would say Imam Abu Hanifa's intellect was more than Imam Ahmad. I was trained to idolize Imam Ahmad. I was trained that way. But I cannot accept that because when studying both of the guys' juristic ruling, Abu Hanifa was much, out of all of the, Imam Shafi'i and Imam Abu Hanifa were in their own crop from intellectual deduction, from a depth of analysis and so forth. Those were amazing. Imam Malik grew very old and learned so much from all the hadiths and so forth, and his angle of Ahl al-Madinah gave a spice to it that would open up for future cultures